Okay, going like. Let's see if this getting started with Firebase Remote Config on iOS and SWIFTUI will work as a live for today. Let me know if you can hear me. Hopefully you can. Just add in the chat. Let's just see. I'm just going to wait. The other time around I did not have audio set up correctly. Hopefully now it's okay. And once that's done, we will dive into Firebase's remote config. Let's just wait for a feedback here. Okay, audio is nice and dandy. So today we are going to talk about Firebase and remote config. Okay, so we are going to build up an app that is going to have some remote config values. And let's just open up a new window here for Firebase. And let's just go to the Firebase console because we are going to build up a brand new app. And yes, we need to create a new app in the console. So let's just do that right away. And click on add project here. And let's enter our project name. Let's see, remote config. And yeah, remote config is okay. Let's hit on continue there. I will enable Google Analytics. Again, continue. Let's select our account here. Yeah, if you don't have a Google Analytics account, you will need to set up one or just go to previous and don't enable Google Analytics. So let's create our project here. And while we wait, let me just tell you why remote config is so awesome. Well, let's say it's the basic default value of a button. Let's say it has a background color of red. And you want to change it on the fly to green without submitting your app to the App Store again. Well, now you can with remote config with just a few clicks of a button. Of course, you have to set it up, and that is what we are going to do today. So let's click on continue here. And yeah, that is it. Remote config is set up. All we have to do is create an iOS project. So for that, we are going to open up Xcode here. There we go. And let's create a new project. By the way, go ahead and if you have any questions along the way, just type them in the comment section. I will answer all of those questions after the project has been done at the end of the live. Okay, and I will call this remote config. There we go. I will use, what should I use? I will use storyboards for now. Let's see here. I do have, let's just use SWIFTUI because it's much more interesting. Okay, there we go. Let's click on next. And I will add this to a new folder here. Let's call it live for now. Why not? Let's create it. And I will create a Git repository so you can check it out later on. The links will be on the description. So let's get rid of all of these. I don't really like the canvas. Yeah, so that's that. We wanted to create our project, and let me just resize it just a little bit here. Maybe this one too. There we go. So we can see all of it. Let's move back to our Xcode. And there we go, full screen, hooray! Now we have this bundle identifier, so let's copy that out, move back to our browser and select iOS, and then add our bundle identifier. So yeah, app nickname and app store ID are all optional, so let's just continue. Let's download the Google Service Info plist file and add it to our project. There we go. Yeah, and as you can see, I already downloaded a bunch of Google Service Info plist file and it tagged it as 2. So all we have to do is just delete that. Okay, that is really important. Otherwise, Xcode will not find the Google Service Info plist file. Okay, let's move forward. Click on Next here. And now we need to create a pod file and add the necessary pods to that. So let's open up Terminal. Okay, Terminal. I believe it's here, but I will create, let's see, a new window. Yeah, a basic window. Okay, there we go. So let's type in cd and the space here, and let's go to the root of our folder where we save this, and it's under Documents, Work, YouTube, Videos, Live, Remote Config. Yep. Let's go to Terminal and just simply drag and drop the root folder. There we go. We are in Remote Config. So what we need to do is type in remote init to create a pod file, so we can use that later on. And there we go. We are ready. And I am just dragging it onto the Xcode icon so we can open it up in Xcode. The platform should be iOS 13. And now let's go back to our Google Chrome and see what we need to add. So there we go. First of all, we already added Google Analytics. So pod Firebase Analytics is a good thing to do. So let's copy that out. So I'm copying out everything and pasting it here. And now let's take a look at the desired Firebase products. It's always a good idea to open it up to see the latest pod that you have to add, and we are going to use remote config. So we are just going to scroll a little bit down. I believe it's the last one. There we go, and just copy this out and then paste it right below there. Okay, this should be saved, so I'm just going to quit and go back to Terminal. There we go, and type in pod install. Now this will install all of the required dependencies. As you can see, there are quite a few, but basically they are all Firebase SDKs. Okay, and yeah, anyway, we need to quit this Xcode project because now we want to open it up as the workspace. There we go, the workspace has been created. So yeah, everything is a-okay. Let me just resize this again. And let's move forward with, let's just double check, there we go, and everything seems to be okay. Let's move forward with the setup, and let's see here. I believe that is kind of it, but let's just move forward with next. Yep, we want to initialize it, so copy import Firebase. This is self-explanatory. If you already are a fan of my channel, then you already know that we need to configure Firebase here. And if you're not, go ahead and simply subscribe to the channel. Maybe hit that notification bell to get notified when all of these lives and other tutorials will be available on the channel. So yeah, we have basically configured Firebase. So now it's a good time to maybe hit Command R so we can build all of this up and see that nothing fails, we have no errors, and the app works as expected. And of course, Firebase is configured correctly. Okay, next up we are going to, let's see, go into the content view and maybe create a button and create a detail view, because as you will see in later on, Firebase's remote config is fetched upon launch, but yeah, so we will see there are quite some issues there. So yeah, if you don't understand something, go ahead and comment in the comment section, and I will make sure to address those at the end of the live stream. But most probably once you will get to the end of this tutorial, you will see and understand most of the things. Okay, everything seems to be working okay. Let's take a look at the simulator. Here we have Hello World. Okay, so what we want to do is add a button here, and that button will go to a detail view. So let's create our detail view first. There we go. Let's stop this and hit Command N so we can create a new SWIFTUI view. Click on Next and call it Detail View. There we go, Detail View. Really simple. Let me just close off the canvas here. And yeah, basically what I want to do here is have this Hello World text, and I will add a font here, so font, and it will be a large title for now, and I will add a foreground color, so foreground color, and let's have it system red, rather yet, let's see, color dot system, where is this? Isn't it? Okay, so maybe I will just there we go. Red is okay. So we want to present this detail view on the tap of a button on the content view. So let's go back and create our button in the content view, and we will going to use a sheet here. Let's just delete all of this and just start typing in button, and we are going to use an action, and for the action we need a state, and basically we are going to name it is sheet presented, and we are going to set it to false. And again, this is a state variable, and because this is a state, we are going to use it as a private by default. Var is sheet presented equals false. Okay, and we are going to toggle it as the action. So self, because we are in the completion, is sheet presented, and toggle. There we go. Now comes the label, and I will just delete all of this and add two curly brackets here. I'm just going to add another text for the label, and let's see, text, and it should be, let's say, tap me or something like that. I will have a font, there we go, of title, and a foreground color of, let's say, blue for now. Okay, and that should be it. All we have to do is present our sheet, and that is pretty straightforward with the sheet is presented content. Okay, is presented is a binding, so we are going to add in here our state is sheet presented, and the content will be our detail view. Let's see, detail view. Let's initialize that. Okay, now we should have no more errors, and let's just build and run and see if we got that right. Build has succeeded, that is always a good thing. Let's tap me, hello world, there we go, and I'm just going to dismiss it by swiping it down. Okay, looks really awesome. Now let's just stop this and talk about what we really want to achieve here. What we want is to have our text here, and let me just add in here some new lines. We want to have this tap me, the font color, foreground color, and the same for the detail view. We want to have it as a remote config. So for that we are going to need some stuff, and first of all, let's create a remote config defaults.plist file, because that is what we are going to set our default values into. Because if, let's say, we don't have any internet connection, or we haven't downloaded the remote config from the Firebase servers just yet, then we really need to have a default values for this. So Let's go under the Google Service Info plist file and let's create a new plist file, property list. There we go. Now you could add this as in code as a dictionary, but I found it much more easy to use property lists. So I will name this remote config defaults. Okay, let's create it. And again, this is a dictionary, so yeah, that is a-okay. And I will add a greeting text, so greeting text. That will be a string, and that will be hello world. That's correct. And let's add button text. And that will be tap me. Okay, next up we want to have a button text color hex. And that will be, and I'm just copying this out, 3498 dB. Okay, and the same will be for our greeting text color hex. Okay, greeting text color hex. Okay, now we have our defaults set up. Next up, we want to have some keys. And I'm just going to add it into a struct because, hey, I don't want to have any typos. So let's create another file. This time it will be a Swift file. Let's create next. And let's name it RC key because it's much more convenient and short. And I will create a struct and name it RC key. And let's create our static lets here, static let, and I'm just going to copy this out and paste that in there, equals. We are going to reference these keys when we are going to display the actions of our remote config. Okay, let's just do this real quick. Here we have our button text key. Button text color hex. Okay, and finally our other hex, and that is called greeting text color hex. Okay, there we go. Now we do have that. As you can see, we have our hex colors here, and by default we don't have support for hex colors. So what I'm going to do here is just share our UI color plus extension file, and let me just do that from airdrop. Just a second, we should be able to see it. There we go. Let's accept it, and I have downloaded it to our downloads folder. So what I want to do is just simply drag and drop it here. Okay, now you will have access to this UI color extension in the resources. After I just finish with this live, I'm going to add that in there. But basically, we want to have this convenience in it with a hex string. Okay, and yeah, that's that. Let's move forward. What else do we have to do here? Well, let's create our remote config manager because, yeah, I could go in here with the content view and just type in here remote config and with some config value and so on, but I want to make this as universal as possible, so I'm just going to create a remote config manager. So let's add it right under the RC keys. So let's create a new file here, next, and call it remote config manager. There we go. Let's create it. Again, this will be a struct where we will have, I I believe there are two static functions that we are going to do here. So let's just start off typing and we'll see the rest. Okay, so struct and just copying out remote config manager from here. There we go. First of all, we need to basically initialize a remote config instance, and I will set this to private. Oh, sorry, we need to have this capital R here. So where was I? We need to set this to private because we don't want to access it or maybe modify it in our code somewhere else. So we are just going to create a private static var. And this needs to be static because we are going to use it in our static functions that we are going to declare in just a moment. So remote config, there we go. And this will be of type remote config, so I need to import Firebase. There we go. Maybe let's hit Command B, so yeah, we do get those completions. So remote config, okay. And basically, let's initialize it and create our variable remote config because, yeah, we are going to add some configuration to it too. And this is remote config. This is what you basically see in the documentation, but we are going to move that a little bit to an advanced level. So return here our remote config, and that should get rid of our missing return. Okay, we need to have this with not a capital R, with a small r. So what we want to add in here is some settings. Now you could omit these if you wanted to, but it's okay, and I will guide you through. This is basically very good for development purposes and for you to set this up on a live environment. We will see basically for the minimal fetch environment. That's what we are going to talk about mainly. So we are going to create settings, and that is a remote config settings. There we go. And let's see, these settings will have a minimum fetch interval. Now, this is good to be set, let's say, maybe about 3060 seconds, but for now, let's just set it to 0 so we don't have that delay, and whenever we restart our project, we get the fetch immediately. But make sure to fetch this, set this to something else, maybe a day, maybe an hour, I don't know, it depends on your project. But this is where you can set those minimum fetch intervals. So not on every launch the Firebase service is called. Now we need to set the remote config settings. So remote config settings equals to this settings. And finally, we want to set the defaults from the plist. And this is really easy. Remote config set defaults, and as you can see, we have two types, defaults from a dictionary and the other one from a plist. So we are going to use this one from the plist file, and I will just copy the name of the plist here just to be sure. Go back, and there we go. One thing to note here before I move forward, that all of the values that you set up and you can use with remote config is they are all strings. So no integers or no doubles or no dictionaries or arrays. All of them have to be strings. So keep in mind when you are building out the structure of basically your dictionary for remote configs. So let's move forward. And first, what we need to do here is basically configure, and we are going to activate it. So let's create our static func here, and I will name it configure because, yeah, firebase.configure, and this will be remote config manager configure, and I will have our expiration duration, not date, and that is a time interval. There we go. And I will set this to 3600 seconds. And again, this is the expiration duration for our first fetch, for our fetch when we first launched, sorry. Now we want to fetch our remote config, so that is pretty simple. We call upon this remote config and we call fetch, and we are going to use with expiration duration, because why not, we already set this, and we just set this to expiration duration, there we go, and we have a completion handler. As you can see, we get back a status and an error. So status and error. The error is optional, so let's take care of that first. So if let error equals error, the usual way, we are going to print out the error's localized description. So print error dot localized description, and we want to return. We don't want to do anything else. Let's return. Otherwise, if we don't have an error, then let's just print out, let's say, array received values from remote config. Okay, next up, we want to activate finally our remote. So remote config dot remote config activate, and with completion handler, we don't really want to do anything, so we are just going to add that nil. Now we have activated our remote config with this fetch. Otherwise, we will have this default value when we want to fetch the values. But how do we actually fetch the values? And this is our final function here. We are going to fetch the value for our config key. Okay, so again, another static func here. I will call it value for key, and let's add here for key, and let's name this key, and it will be of course a string, and we will return of course a string, and you already know why, because remote config only returns string values. And again, this is a pretty straightforward remote config dot config value, and there we go. We are going to use this for key. Okay, and this is a key, so our key, and as you saw, it might be optional, but I am using this key as a non-optional, and what we want to return again is a non-optional, so we want to have this string value, and I'm just going to bang that out. And you see there are a lot of force unwrapping here, but hey, you should crash your app in test mode if everything goes wrong with these config values at all. So how to use this, and here comes the fun part. Let's just go back to our content view, and let's just talk a little about this tap me, and that is for the RC key button text, and it's really easy. So let's just, again, this is a string, so we can just start typing in here because the text requires a string. We are going to use the remote config manager dot value, what we have just created for our key, and that is an RC key and button text. There we go. How awesome was that? Now let's change the foreground color, and again, remote config manager and value for key, and I'm just going to use RC key and one of those hex values, and I believe it's the button text color hex. Okay, so let's build and run and see how that looks, and I believe we have an issue here. Let's see. Oh yes, so we need to create a color, and this is just a string. So let me just copy all of this out, like I'm just going to cut it out with Command X, so we can use it later on. And here we are going to use a color, and if you noticed, we are going to use a UI color, and we are going to type in UI color with a hex value that we do have this hex string, and the string is that pasted in there as a string from our remote config. I know it's kind of interesting, but hey, that's that. Okay, uh, let's see. Hitting Command R and see how this looks like. Okay, now let's see what we got here on the logs. Yeah, we don't have anything, but we do have our TAPME as a bluish color, and yeah, that is what we kind of want, but that is the default value. So before we even get anything, we want to go back to the app delegate, and here in the Firebase app.configure, we want to go remote config manager and configure, and I'm just going to configure as usual. Okay, we could just add in here expiration duration of some sort. Let me just have this here so you can change that later down the line. Okay, so let's hit Command R and we should see some more logs here, and there we go. Okay, received values from remote config. Okay, we did receive values from remote config, but it is using the default value. Now it's time to change all of those. So it's time to go to our browser here. Let's click on next. Let's just finish all of this up. And as you can see, I have run the app with Firebase SDK installed, and it says that our verification has been done. If not, then you just click on skip. It doesn't really matter. You will run your app at some point or the other. So let's just scroll down here to our remote config. And now it is really simple. So all you have to do is add some parameters and the default values for those. And let me just see what I got on my other ones. Yeah, maybe let's just do this on our own. So first up, I will go to the RC keys because it's really easy to copy from here and add that there. Greeting text, and I will type in here hello remote config. Okay, add parameter. Now let's take a look at how the greeting text is by default, and as you can see in the remote config default values, the greeting text is hello world. And if I just start off just the simulator, so let me just go, this is the older version, so tap me, it says hello world. So that's that. Now let's just add all the others and see how they look like. Okay, button text. Let's go to our Chrome browser, add parameter, button text, and the default one is tap me. Let's see, show sheet. That would be a real nice button text. Okay, next up, button text color hex. Okay, let's see now. Let's go to our browser, add our parameter, and I like to use flat UI colors, so flat UI colors. And let's pick something not that blue, and I'm going to use this Zarine maybe. Copy that out and paste that in. Of course, we need to get rid of the hash, and let's add our parameters. So that is the greeting text. And now let's select, let's say for the button text, let's have this Wisteria. Okay. Add parameter. Yeah, I'm just going to copy it out. First of all, the key, and then again the value from here. Also, don't forget to get rid of that hash. Okay, now you can see that all of them are in bold, and that is because we haven't published any changes. So let's do that. Let's publish our changes here, and they should be live and dandy. Now let's just build and run our project and see if the button text and the button color hex has changed. Well, not just yet, and that is because when we first launch our app, we do get instantly our default values, and that is tap me and this bluish color. And after that, we want to have, maybe it takes just a second or maybe two, but basically it's after this setup that we receive our values from remote config. And because we are on the content view, and that is shown basically immediately, we are using the default values rather yet the default values that we have in the config, because next time around, let me just go back to our simulator. Next time around, we already have some fetch data from remote config from Firebase. So when I build and run again, you will not see this tap me as a blue button. We will see the fetched values that we fetched at this sign up. So just make sure that you understand all of this. And as you can see, show sheet is presented and array received values from remote config and so on. And there is a most recently fetch config is already activated. Okay, that's okay. So let me just go back to our simulator and tap on show sheet. And hello world still is there, which is not what we want, but again, we haven't implemented that yet. So let's go to our details view and change some stuff here. And the first one is the hello world text. And that is again remote config manager dot value for key, and the key is RC key and greeting text. Okay. Let's move forward, and I will just add a return here for the large title and the foreground color. Again, this will be a quite long one, but exercise makes perfect. So color, and that will be, let's see, a UI color. And we are going to use our hex color, hex string rather. And for the hex string, again, we are going to use our remote config manager value for key, and the key is RC key dot greeting text color hex. I know it's a long one, but it's kind of self-explanatory. It really works. So now let's hit Command R and see that indeed we do have our values fetched. Okay, so show sheet and hello remote config. How awesome is that? So let's just change a few things, just so you know that you don't have to really go back to submitting a new app. And how I do this is just going to open up just this remote config. So I'm not running anything from the Xcode project. I'm using the standalone app. So it says show sheet and hello remote config. Okay, let's just change a few things. Let's go back to Google Chrome. And first of all, let's change our greeting text. Like, let's say, hello YouTube. Okay, and let's update. And as you can see, this is bolded out. So let's publish our changes. Let's publishing our changes. Let's just wait for that. And now let's go back to our simulator. And if I tap on show sheet, as you can see, this is just the old value because we need to restart it. So let me just close this one. Just swipe that up to close it. It's really hard to close it in the simulator. It's long. And now when I tap on remote config, show sheet is still the same because we didn't change it. But now we should already get the greeting text from our remote config. So we should see hello YouTube, and the same will go to the hex color also. Now let's just go ahead and just as a reminder, change the, let's say, button text and show sheet, and I will just type in here present the sheet. There we go. Let's update it and publish changes, publishing changes. There we go. And now if again, if I just don't open it up, you will see show sheet, not present the sheet. Now if I do the same thing, let's just swipe this out. So we just launch the app again. What do you think it will happen? I bet you already know, but let's just do that. You will not see presented the sheet. And why is that? Now again, let me just iterate through, because this show sheet is now the default value of our remote config for the button text, and it takes a few seconds to fetch from the servers, and this is the first view that is presented, then it is presented instantly. Now if I tap on show sheet, of course, hello YouTube will be in there. Okay, now let me just close this off, and now we do have an updated let's say dictionary of our configurations. So now when I tap on remote config, we will have present the sheet. Okay, so let me just go through that again, and now I will change both of them. So now let's say I will just add in here show sheet again, show sheet, and I will update this to hello remote config. Okay, and now let's publish our changes, publishing changes, and again you will not see any changes for the show sheet, but you will see changes for the remote config. Okay, now let me just close this off. It's really hard to swipe here on the simulator, but hey, it works really nice. It's really fast. Again, tapping on remote config, and again present the sheet, tapping hello remote config, and if I dismiss all of this, we already have the latest updated values, and we are going to show that even on the very first view. Okay, let's just double check that we do have remote config there. How awesome was that? And I believe that's it for this tutorial and for this live session here. Let's just take a look at some questions if we do have. Okay, let's see. Lots of love from Canada. Hello, Nirav. Lots of love from Europe too. Yeah, maybe the sound is bad because this is my very first recording, live recording, and I need to tweak some stuff. Greetings from Japan. Hello, Sergey. I do love Firebase too, Xianyu. It is powerful and it is easy to use. Can you show how to save the update Firebase config variables locally? I don't know. Updated. Yeah, so you could save it, but it's not a good idea because we are already saved, so the values are already saved into the so-called default container of our remote config. So whenever we grab our values, they are grabbed from the updated values, and if we would go around that and save it, let's say to user defaults, it's basically breaking the chain of flow there. I wouldn't recommend that. Let's see if we do have something else. Yeah, and that's it. I believe that is it. I hope you enjoyed this live session, and if you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell to get notified of these kind of new videos and live streams as they do come out, and I will try to make the audio as smooth as possible next time. And as usual, I will see you in the next one.